Yeah, I'm going to talk about the difference between the way emotions are affecting us as individuals and as groups, or a political decision-making. As we heard, but the title of my book is Why Our Emotions Are More Rational Than We Think, and most of the book is about individual decision-making. But unfortunately, we operate emotions, or we deal with emotion much differently when it gets into politics. And there I have much more pessimistic view than the one we heard this morning in the interview. Why are emotions rational in individual decision-making? And there are basically two arguments. First of all, intuition builds on emotional memory, okay? Which is easier to store and retrieve than factual memory. And just remember a situation when you saw somebody and you said, I've seen this person in the past, but you won't be able to recognize or wouldn't be able to say, where was it that you saw him first? What's his name? What's his profession? Okay? However, you will definitely recall whether the interaction, whether the encountering with this person was positive or negative. Whether he is a nice guy or an arrogant, whether he's an interesting person to talk with or a boring one. And these aspects are remembered through the emotion that we invoke within this interaction, okay? And because you remember them, you are able to use them. And this is much more useful information that you can then apply when you decide whether to cooperate with this person or not, than the factual information that I described earlier, like his name, okay? The other reason which most of my book is dealing is about interactive emotions that we are using as a commitment device, okay? What emotion allow us to do is to tie our hands behind our back. And it might seem strange, but tying your hands behind your back in a situation which is strategic may give you an advantage, right? I mean, the nicest historical example that I heard from an history professor who is a friend of mine is the Roman troops that were crossing the Rhine chasing the German tribes used to burn the bridges behind themselves. Now, burning the bridging behind yourself is like tying your hands behind, but you're limiting your options. Yet, they made them better off because they could actually signal their enemies that there's no way for us to go back. We are moving ahead, okay? There are very nice experiments done in the US in different versions where they take people into the lab and gives them some money, and they have to negotiate about dividing them. But there's some group, some of these people are manipulated to enter the bargaining slightly more angry than the others. How do you do it? The most known way to do it is to ask a person to write down on a sheet of paper the most annoying incident that he recalls or she recalls in the last 2 days. That makes them quite annoying, okay? And what they found out in these experiments, that those people who went into the lab with a higher level of anger also left the lab with a higher level of money. And if you ask yourself, how is it possible? The answer is that anger allows us exactly to do this thing of tying our hands behind our back. Anger, without anger, if we are fully rational, perfectly rational, not exposed to any emotion, like, let's say, Mr. Spock, and somebody offers us something which is humiliating, like, let's say, €1 out of 100, and tells us, I have the power to decide how we divide it. If we are super rational, we should accept it. But if we demonstrate ahead of time that our hands are tied behind our back, our mental state is such that we won't be able to accept a humiliating offer of one that make us very annoyed, then this humiliating offer won't come in the first instance, right? So this is one of the things that, through the book, I demonstrate other emotions that operate in very much the same way, of generating commitment, okay? So if we are so positive in the individual decision-making side, what happens when we do politics, okay? When we do politics, it looks different, okay? Here are some of the expressions that became popular just since the 2016 election in the US, okay? I mean, the one that you might not know is the one that I hear very often in Britain called autoimmune politics. Autoimmune politics refer to situation in which a country suffers from something like autoimmune disease where the body fights itself, right? And this is very much what happened with the Brexit. Many people believe that that's what happened in Brexit. And also in various other countries that adopted authoritarian politics or extreme right-wing politics. And this is only a partial list, okay? Where is it coming from, okay? So the first thing, in order to battle this or come up with the idea about how to treat it, is to understand where it is coming from. And to understand it, we have to go back to evolution, okay? And maybe take you to the hunt and gather time, where we formed small groups, and we had to deal with the tension between the need to cooperate that we were compelled to do in order to search and hunt for food, and the need to compete to overcome shortages, okay? Even with cooperation, there was still shortage. And so you needed also to compete. And you needed to compete, and if other people compete, you need to cooperate in order to make sure not only that you find and are able to hunt, but also that once you hunted something, there's not going to be somebody else who will catch it from you and steal it from you, okay? And these very basic purposes generated what we call today the in-group, out-group behavior, or in-group favoritism, out-group hate. There are lots of experiments that were done, and this is actually what determined to a large extent the way we develop as society since the beginning of the Homo sapiens, starting with small families, to extended families, to tribes, to villages, to city-states like Athens and Florence, to real states, and more recently to international alliances like the European Commission, the European Community, or something similar, right? And now this is the pessimistic message. Extreme right-wing or authoritarian politics is the most natural selection choice. It's the most, it doesn't mean that it's the best choice, but it's the most natural selection choice. What it means is if we had here some aliens coming from Mars, and we would incorporate him as a citizen on Earth, and we would ask him, you know, you have to decide which party you vote, and we show him the two platforms of an authoritarian party, okay, and alternatively a liberal party. Most likely, if this person, if he has the genes like us, this person would vote for an authoritarian party, okay? It's because the message is so simple and so appealing. It's us against them, and we have to be united in order to manage to overcome them. Whereas the liberal message would be, yes, but they should have their own rights also. It's much more complex. It's much more difficult to digest, right? And if you look at it, if you look at the span of life of the Homo sapiens, which is 100,000 years, and you look at the period in which liberalism was ruling, well, it never ruled completely. But liberalism is basically a very, very young idea. It captures probably 1/500 of the entire span of the of the human race, of Homo sapiens, right? Even if you look at the history of civilization 5,000 years ago, okay, liberalism is this very small fraction of time that, and even within this very small fraction of time, it never really was adopted extensively, but only in a very limited, a fraction of the world society. Okay? And this is how in-group, out-group trends are separating us, and there are some very nice experiments that can show you that by assigning randomly people with colors is enough to generate in-group favoritism and out-group hate, okay? And nations were built on fighting, even today, fighting on ideas that are not more important than which color you like, okay? And very often they will tell stories, a narrative to themselves that the other group is up there to eliminate them, and the other group will develop its own narrative, and it will never stop there. It's actually a nested thing, okay? Parties will come, and there will be the yellow party and the orange party, and the yellow party will attack the orange party, saying that they are not really warm. Okay, there are two types of colors, warm and cold, and they are rather should be in the cold with the cold people. And even further, parties will split themselves into light parties and heavy party. You know, a good example is the Labour Party in the UK, and the light party, or the heavy party would say about the light party that they're not really yellow, they're just imitating to be yellow, and they should actually become orange, okay? And this will go on until when? Until election comes up, and when election comes up, they will move back to only two colors in each state, right? Okay, and they say that we have to be united against the real enemy, which is now the orange, okay? And this will go on like this until when? God forbid, until there is a war. And then we'll have back only these two colors, okay? Again, let's put the differences aside, political differences aside. We are all warm color, or we are all cold color, and we should act accordingly. Okay? Some experiments that we do in also collecting data, gave us information about why people are voting. Why people are voting is also something that bothers both economists and political scientists, because if you think about it, okay, if you think about it, it's not rational to vote. If you try to compute, if you think that you are affecting the outcome of the election, the chances that your vote will actually flip the outcome of the election is basically null. Since ancient Greek, there was no single election in which was determined by one vote, okay? The probability is virtually almost exactly zero, okay? And nevertheless, it's quite an effort to move out of home and go to the poll and put your vote. And then people ask, why do nevertheless people vote? And the answer that we get for it, which I believe very much, is that people vote to express themselves. We call it expressive voting. People vote in order to say who they are. This is one of the ways by which we generate this grouping, by telling people that's my trait, this is my personality, this is what I believe in. Exposing it will allow you to find the right group. And what we found is that very, very specific pattern of votings, especially in the context of turnout, are very similar to those that bring people to the stadium in a football match, right? The same driving force that get people to participate in a football match as viewers or as fans operate when people go to vote. I won't have time to extend of this, but this is one of the insights that we get from our experiments. Okay? One of the chapters that I have in the book is called Collective Emotions. I regret the fact that it's too short, and I'm now thinking of expanding on this idea in my second book. And it basically says, one of the things that it says is what I told you now, but also the fact that we are expressing emotion more intensively within a group. And I'm talking about rage, grief, humor, okay? We express rage more intensively when we are within a group. We grieve more deeply when we are in a group. You know what it is? It's North Korea, okay? And we also laugh better when we are in a group. This is why we have laughing soundtracks on TV comedies, okay? And all these joint emotion, collective emotion, are meant in order to generate the cohesiveness within the group. It's again the signal that we evolutionarily adopted in order to say to the group, listen, I'm part of you. I'm coordinated with your beliefs, with the way you act, with your ideology, and so forth. Okay? But this has consequences, and the consequences say that when it gets to politics, rather than talking about crowd wisdom, we have to talk about crowd stupidity. Okay? Because what happens there is that emotion screen out our rationality to a large extent. Okay, and I'll give you some example. Getting ourselves informed only about sources that are biased in favor of our initial views. Here is a very nice experiment that was done in the US. You get some people, you ask them their views about some ideological issue, let's say death penalty, and you rank them, and you ask them to rank to express their opinion about it between 0 and 10. Okay, some are extremely in favor, which would say 10. Some are extremely against, they would say 0. Okay, now you collect data, completely neutral data about the effectiveness of the death penalty in fighting crime, and you expose all these people to the same information. They're all smart students, so they can understand this information. And now you ask them to express their opinion again with the same scale. What would we expect should happen? People should converge. Those people who were 0 or 1 will move to 2 because they saw the same natural information. Those who were 10 will move to 9. Instead, what we see that they diverge. Those who were, let's say, 7 become 9, or those who were 3 become 2. Okay, they got the same information, they diverge. This is a completely emotional reaction to information. Okay, ignoring facts that contradict our views. This is also part of it, because when you read this information, unbiased information, neutral information, you screen out all the evidence that is against your prior belief, and you incorporate only those that are consistent with your prior beliefs. But also interpreting facts that contradict you as facts that support it. This is people, you come to people with arguments why the view is wrong, and you ask them, and you ask the comment, they will explain to you why the view they express, given the new evidence, is proving their initial opinion, okay? Note that if it was really about understanding correctly the state of things and not emotions, at least among intelligent people, and you do have a huge variety even among intelligent people in way of deciding in politics. If it was only a matter of observing data and understanding things and making the right inferences, we should have converged to some identical opinion. But the fact that we never do, even after we debate stuff over and over again, like Brexit, right? I think one of the horrible things that was done in the case of Brexit was trying to get economists to express themselves about how bad it is in terms of economics, right? Including one very famous list of Nobel laureates that spoke very vividly, very vividly against it. I think this got those people who were in favor of Brexit even more supporting this, just because they identify those professors as those outside group that have the interest in keeping Brexit. So it's not the evidence, it's what people interpret from the evidence about their counter groups, about the group that they are trying to oppose, okay? Confirming herding is another phenomenon. Now, remedies, okay? It's hard to find remedies here, but one remedy that might help is that we increase and we find tricks to increase the interaction with people that have opposing opinions. One way to do it, there was a nice experiment that was done, field experiment that was done in the US by a recent PhD in Berkeley, where he asked people about their opinion online, in Facebook, and then those people who identified themselves as right-wing, he offered them a free access to the New York Times. Those people who identify themselves as left-wings, he offered them free access to Fox News, okay? None of these people changed their opinion after 2 months that they were exposed to the opposing views of these news channels. But what they did, the way they did change is by showing more empathy to those people that believe in the opposing opinion, the opposing ideology, right? And this is the starting point to get people to break away from this emotional reaction to politics. Because once you show empathy to the other group, to the outgroup, right? You stop, the effect of trying to oppose it becomes much weaker. And you are more open to new information that is a priori opposing your own opinion. So this is one way of dealing it. The other thing is that we should be more aware. I don't know if you recall this statement, "It's the economy stupid," by James Carville. James Carville was Clinton's campaign advisor, and he had this idea that people vote according to who they believe will have the economy better next term. This today is so remote from the reality, because people are not concerned today. The way they vote is very far away from this expression, the economy is stupid. They are more into what they regard or how they identify with the personalities behind the parties and with the groups that are typically associated with one party or another, okay? I have one last message to you. I know that most of you are executives, and there's one thing that we can take out of it, and I decided to tell those of you who don't know this story about Continental Airline, to tell it here and draw from it some consequences, some ideas about how to utilize collective emotion in a positive way. So let me say very briefly, Continental Airline was facing during mid-90s a crisis that almost got it out of business. Due to a very bad performance in on-time departure, many passengers left the company. And they put a new CEO in this company, and he decided on a program that he called Go Forward program, which was very simple. And this program offered exactly $60 bonus to each employee, starting with the cleaner up to the CEO, fixed $60 for each employee at each month in which the company is ranked among the top 5 US airline companies in on-time departure. Only $60. And you ask yourself, this moved actually the company from a deficit of 200 million within 1 year to a profit of 200 million. An enormous change. And when you ask yourself, how can it be? What employee would exert substantially more effort for the possibility of earning another $60 a month? And the answer is, of course, is that it's not, your earning is not the issue. What makes this new rule so effective is the concerns of other people to be held responsible, and this connects to Christian's earlier talk, to be held responsible for the fact that so many other people in the company are not getting the bonus. Okay? And we tend to oversee the effectiveness of collective mechanisms, of collective bonuses, maybe aside to individual bonuses. Collective bonuses create these idea that we are, within a group, are responsible for one another. Okay? And if we manage to do it without hurting the incentive for competition, and there are ways to do it, then we can gain a lot by introducing collective incentive schemes. Okay? I think I'm done. Okay? These are the take-home messages practically. Collective emotion can be productive or destructive. Unfortunately, in the context of politics, they're almost always destructive. By being aware of them, we can control them to a certain extent, or even utilize them, as the case with Continental Airline was. Thank you. I think I'll stop here.